Boris Skunk.
The forest can be cruel. It's filled with hateful types and uppity sorts. There are the ones who turn their backs on you, and there are the ones who shut their eyes to avoid what's unpleasant. They're all the same in my book, and let us not forget evil. Oh yes, the forest holds that too. She looked so pitiful, miserable and pitiful. I am not one to get misty about such things, but to see that young lady all alone, my, sobbing and frightened, exposed to the elements, her head jolting about at the slightest sound, and her as plain to see as a bear cub in a snowstorm. Pitiful. Tugged at my heartstrings, she did. Played sad music somewhere inside old Boris. Thought I'd forgotten the melody long ago.
Claudette, cougar. Not in my nature to kill anything I haven't tasted before, but it is in my nature to be curious. Never seen a creature like her. Looked pretty stupid just standing there in the open. Could smell her fear all the way down from where I was bedding that night, even in the downpour. I stalked her some, but I didn't attack. Stupid doesn't mean she won't still put up a fight. Needed to check her out some more. Thought maybe she was a moose at first. Heard stories of cougars taking down moose. Moose are big animals. More meat than one deer. That girl was no moose, though. She might have been big enough, but she had no antlers. And moose aren't so stupid.
Doris, dear, I had bad dreams that night. Oh yeah, I kept seeing the shadow of some scary, giant monster blob-a-majig stomping through the woods, making those exact same crashing sounds we kept hearing the previous afternoon and evening. I can only imagine what kind of face a thing like that would have. You know, 1,000 sharp teeth and claws, longer than a crow's beak, and it would be slobbering with its tongue hanging low, right? So I'd wake up all jumpy, and Mama would tell me to hush because she's fed up with my way over the top imagination, as she puts it. And so then I'd go back to sleep and have the same toot nightmare. Oh yeah, it was an endless cycle of trauma that I could only hope will not scar me for life. But in the morning, we browsed the red maple trees and the witch hazel, and for a while I heard none of those spooky sounds, which was just fine with me. A fawn wants to eat her breakfast in peace. She doesn't want no crazy monster thing sneaking up on her while she's nibbling on shrubs. Oh yeah.
Audrey Cow. I didn't sleep a wink that first night. I was so grateful to see the first orange streaks of dawn smudged across the sky. I counted my blessings. I had survived, and there was something to acknowledge and be grateful for. Before I left Bittersweet Farm, Roy told me that I should be on my guard. He said that there are creatures other than humans that a cow has to be wary of in a forest. So, as I said, I managed to get through one night, and it gave me a little bit of confidence, even though I was near starving. It was my hunger that gave me the will to keep moving. My muscles were stiff and cold, and the effort was not without pain. But every now and then I came across thin puddles of water that had not yet drained into the earth. I lapped them up with deep delight. That was my morning, moving from one puddle to the next, but keeping an eye out for something familiar to eat.
Casey, human. Jumpin' June bugs. My troubles were far from over after that flat tire. The cow disappeared into the woods and was gone in a flash. Once I got Red Bessie up and running, I had to tell the folks at Daisy Dream Abattoir that I had lost the cow. I tried explaining about the crazy farm animals, the cow opening the latch, and the sudden crow attack. Mr. Orfold, the manager, checked my forehead for a fever. Then he refused to pay me or Bittersweet Farm for an undelivered cow. So I phoned Bittersweet Farm. Glenn was none too thrilled either, don't you know, insisting the deal was done once I left his property. Words were flying, and I feared that they were going to make me pay for the cow. But when emotions finally simmered down, we all decided that we should notify the authorities, so that if worse came to worse and the cow wasn't found, the insurance company could claim we didn't at least try to find her. Calls were made, plans discussed, and I'm scuttling between Daisy Dream, Bittersweet Farm, and the regional police station, filling out reports and getting razzed by every officer on duty. By the end of the day, I was as miserable and sorry as a man could be. I headed over to Connie's Good Times Grill, ready to drown my sorrows in root beer floats and country music. I find myself sitting next to this guy who starts asking me about karaoke night. I was in no mood to answer questions. My nerves were frayed. But when he sees I'm down in the dumps, he lends me a sympathetic ear. The next thing you know, I'm telling him the whole crazy saga. Of course, I'm expecting him to break out laughing at any moment, just like everyone else. But no, he's real interested. He's asking me questions. What are you going to do about the runaway cow now? He says. I tell him that the police have called in some forest ranger or something, and he's going to track down the animal first thing in the morning. And then what? The guy asks. And then what? And then what? I repeat. And then I'm going to get that darn cow over to Daisy Dream Abattoir and be done with the whole mess. Well, the guy just sits there thinking quietly for a minute. Then he pulls out his phone and calls his boss. He's relating my whole story, including the part about the cow hunt, and it's slowly dawning on me that he's a reporter. No, I'm screaming at him. You can't be reporting this. He says, why not? You didn't say it was off the record. So, you want to know the reason I moved out of Maple Valley? I'll tell you why. It's having every man, woman, and child within a 50-mile radius read in the newspaper that you were the guy who lost a cow because you were too busy hiding under your truck from a crow.
Jimmy D. Crow. Is that what happened afterward? Oh man, that is so totally wicked.
Humphrey, human. Just speak into the microphone? Now. I am and have been a wildlife enforcement officer for... What was that? Too loud? I see. Let me start again. I am and have been a wildlife enforcement officer for well on to 19 years. Better? Very good. To continue, I received word of the cow in question from my supervisor, who phoned me at my home the evening of the escape. In my capacity as a wildlife enforcement officer, these past 19 years, I have, among many other duties, been assigned to hunt problem bears, cougars, coyotes, and such. But up until that point, I had never been ordered to track down a domestic bovine runaway. I was not well versed in the behavior of cattle gone wild. However, I didn't foresee much difficulty in this assignment. As it was already dark and I was deeply committed to the football game I was watching on television, I suggested to my supervisor that I retrieve the cow first thing in the morning. I anticipated no more than a half-day's effort at best. When I arrived at our offices the next day, I was somewhat surprised to find Miss Torchy Morrow waiting for me. She identified herself as a reporter for the Daily Planet and insisted on accompanying me in the search. I explained that in order to perform my job, there could be no interference from civilians. I would be carrying a rifle, albeit using tranquilizers rather than actual bullets, and would not want any mishap to occur should the cow in question attempt to bolt. Miss Morrow was not dissuaded. I then proceeded to explain that it was against department policy, which, to be honest, was not true, and that, besides, she was not dressed appropriately.
Torchy? Human? This frowning palooka in his spankin' clean uniform is telling me I ain't got the duds for duty. Well, I nearly blew my stack then and there. I said, "Listen, mister, I've hiked through city sewers in a skirt and open-toed heels. You think I'm going to shirk from a patch of mud and a few fallen leaves because I'm sporting a dress and an uptown hairdo? Get used to me, Forrest Copper. We're so hitched together on this hunt, we'll be sending out wedding announcements by the afternoon."
Humphrey, human. Well, yes, I did let her accompany me. Miss Morrow, you perhaps have noticed is a very persuasive individual.
Audrey, cow. When Buster was studying the map back at Bittersweet Farm and searching for the best place for me to escape, I had no idea that the patch of green on the paper translated into so much forest. My morning was no different than the first day. I pressed on and on, following the web of trails, moving forward, but without any sense of getting anywhere. I was hungry and discouraged. For the first and only time, I considered giving up, walking back to the road, and if I could ever find it again, I considered giving up, walking back to the road, if I could ever find it again, and waiting to be picked up. It was foolish thinking, I admit, and it embarrasses me even now. Had I not been wallowing in self-pity, with no regard for the heroic efforts of all my friends at Bittersweet Farm, I'd have noticed earlier the swath of light behind a row of trees in the distance. And this time, it wasn't atop a hill, but straight ahead on flat ground. I approached with caution, not so much in fear of danger, but in an attempt to curb my hope and not be overly disappointed. There was no need. As I neared, I discovered a beautiful meadow, dotted with the blues and reds and yellows of wild flowers. I gasped, "Mother, do you see?" I whispered, "It's paradise. I found Yvonne of Bavaria's hidden paradise." I half expected to see Yvonne herself grazing on a patch of clover. She wasn't, of course. But when I did step into the open field, which was deliciously thick with grass, and felt the full force of sunlight wash over my body, I soon discovered that there was someone else.